Exactly. What could go wrong with this, right? It's controversial, but it's innovative. You can't disagree with it being innovative. And then, how many of you have a cell phone, a mobile phone? Okay, almost everybody in here. Do you remember once upon a time, if you wanted to make a phone call, you would dial? Does anybody remember those days? Me too. Okay, maybe you don't. And once upon a time, if you wanted to take a picture, you got your camera out and did it, right? Now, we're so used to it, we don't even think about it anymore, but you can be like, yeah, honey, yeah, I'm sitting here right in front of, oh, you want me to get a picture of that? Sure. Okay, let me just send that to you. Did you get it, honey? All on the same device. And I have a little, we're used to it now, but you know, when this first came out, it was weird. It was weird because it's a marriage of two different functionalities. And I have this wonderful cartoon I grabbed, and I'll just read it if you can't see it. It says, "Can you hang on a sec? I think I just took another picture of my ear." Because when these things first come out, they're weird because it's innovative. But if you think about it, phones just keep going, right? You know, not only can you take pictures with them, but you can text with them, you can email with them, you can watch television on them, you can listen to music on them. It keeps morphing. It's pretty interesting, but if you know, you get used to it and you don't even see it happening anymore. And this is another example I just want to give that I think is really fun. Sometimes it can lead to just cool ideas that are just kind of fun. And this is a marriage of technology and fashion. Google is one of the companies that's doing this. That's an LED dress. So it's actually got little lights in it. Yeah, and it's hard to tell in this one, so I grabbed another picture. I don't know if you know Lupita Nyong'o. She wore one on The Daily Show. I think it's kind of pretty, actually. But you can actually now buy clothes that have LED lights in them. So that's a few examples of what happened when you bring people from different fields together and they come up with new things. So what about an intrapersonal synergy inside of one person? And this is where I want you to start thinking about yourself again. Here's some famous, interesting examples. And if you guys don't know who this is, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. So, first of all, let me just say that again, we got the field 1 and the field 2, just like before. Only last time I was talking about this would be a different person and then a second person. Now I'm talking about the same person. So, all right, do you know who this guy is? I mean, I know his name is up there, but do you know who he is? How many of you know who he is? I want to see if I'm... You even know who he is. Do you know who he is? Everybody knows who he is. Okay, note to self, Michelle. Lead with Ray Charles. Okay. Okay. This is interesting, and since you know him, I think you'll think it's even more interesting. Ray Charles was interviewed by Rolling Stone magazine a long time ago, and the interviewer said, "Hey, did you sit down one day and decide to just invent soul music?" And he said, "No, it was never my intention to invent nothing. I started out trying to sound 1,000% like Nat King Cole. And I could get hired all the time, but nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew my name. So one day, I just decided to be myself. And I grew up in the church, and I grew up with the blues, and the flavors just naturally came together, and it turned into soul music." So within a single person, there was a sweet spot that was something completely different from what it came from. Right? Do you see this? Okay. How many of you have ever taken a Zumba class? Hey, that right on. I love this. I would have never thought that. That's really cool. The story behind Zumba is very interesting too. Beto Perez was a fitness instructor in Colombia, and he was supposed to be teaching an aerobics class one day, and he forgot his aerobics music. So he ran back to his car and he grabbed what other music he could find that he listened to in his personal collection, and it ended up being merengue and salsa. So he brings that back to class, teaches the class, and it takes on a whole new shape. And voila, Zumba is born. How many of you have ever heard of Lawrence Halprin? Anybody in here a landscape architect? Hi, okay. He is like, to landscape architects, one of my best friends is a landscape architect, and to him, this guy is like a hero. he's really interesting. He was married, he's not with us anymore, but he was married to Anna Halpern, who is still alive, who is a fabulous modern dancer. And he used to watch her dance all the time, and he decided what he would like to do is, you know what landscape architecture is, right? You might hire, if you have a lot of money, you might hire somebody to do your lawn, you know, really beautifully, but they do parks. So he decided to marry landscape architecture with modern dance and create dancing landscapes. And he also built a few dance decks for his wife and other troops, and rather than being rectangular, he had them go around trees so that it would mimic the experience of dancing. So again, very innovative, very creative, something new. Who's this dude? Okay, everybody knows this guy, right? Steve Jobs. And I'm not going to say that Steve Jobs, in and of himself, is wholly responsible for Apple products. He is not. But he had a very strong vision of what they would be like that is still being carried out today, I think. So how many of you know that Steve Apple, well, look, I'm merging the names now. Woo! Steve Jobs, he kind of decided not to go to college anymore after a while. How many of you knew that?
Yeah, Reed.
Reed College. He said, nah, I'm not interested in this anymore. But he didn't leave, he didn't go away. He hung around Reed College. Why did he hang around Reed College? What was he doing there? Anybody know? Yeah. Yeah, he was studying calligraphy. He was really passionate about it, and I have a quote from him I could read later, but he was really passionate about calligraphy. He was really, you know, noticing the space between letters and within letters, and then he went on to study Zen Buddhism. He was a Buddhist, and then later, you know, started in the computer industry. And what's interesting is he brought that aesthetic sense with him to the computer industry. So I was one of the people who got one of his first Macs, and I remember being blown away by the way the fonts looked. We're used to that now, but he brought that. Who knows, if he hadn't studied calligraphy, we might not have Apple products today. We might not. So it's an interesting thought. So do you see how these people brought different parts of themselves together and made something new? Anybody having any kind of feeling of knowing of what your superpower might be? Anybody in here starting to feel something? It takes some digging. I'll tell you, because I've worked with some people, it takes a little digging to find it, but once you do, it's really, really worth it. So I want to tell you, give you some hints as to how you can find out what it might be for you, and I would really encourage you to put a little bit of time into doing it, because once you find this sweet spot in you, you start being an extremely strong, powerful person in this world. And you're happy too, because it makes you feel really good when you bring together your passions and your expertise. It just makes you feel like you're on fire at any age, at any time. Okay, big hint. A lot of times when you're bringing those two worlds together, the skills transfer over. It feels like you're kind of doing the same thing. How many of you know who Paul Allen is? Who is Paul Allen? I used to work with him.
One of the founders of Microsoft.
Co-founder of Microsoft. I have a picture here of him playing a guitar. The reason I have this picture up here is because he used to, when they were first creating Microsoft, code by day and play guitar at night, and then come back and code by day and play guitar at night. And he said, I will read this, playing music forced me to look beyond what currently exists and express myself in a new way. Any musicians in here? Okay. Well, I'm a musician. And I can tell you that when you pick up an instrument and you haven't planned what you're going to play, you're not just playing a song you already heard. You never know what's going to come out, and it's really, really interesting. So what he did is he took that skill of coming up with something new from playing guitar and brought it to coding, and back and forth and back and forth. Who's this? Richard Branson. Richard Branson's a busy guy. He's runs 40-plus Virgin companies, and yet he makes time to kite surf. What? Why would he do that? That's kind of weird. Aren't we supposed to work all the time if we're going to be successful and innovative? Thank you, whoever said no. So one of the things that it gives you is good timing, and I'm going to read a quote, not from him, but another, Scott Picken, who's also a successful businessman. Kite surfing is just like running a business because it gives you good timing. You have to wait for the right time to launch. When you're riding the waves, you must also be on a constant lookout for changes in the environment. So he's out kite surfing, learning how to work. I used to hang glide. And you didn't just do whatever you wanted to do, depending on how fast was the wind blowing that day. Was it 15 miles per hour? Was it 25? Was it coming from the north? Was it coming from the northwest? It changed everything that you did. And when you get better at reading your environment and knowing how to work with it, you can get better at business